I don't know if you're like me, but I've always debated on if I have to move to Los Angeles to pursue filmmaking. Internal conflict is conflicting. I've always been a big believer that if you are talented enough, you can make it anywhere in this field. But I always thought it would be interesting to get the perspective from somebody on the other side. I recently interviewed my friend Radomir Jordanovic, who works in various camera departments throughout Hollywood. He's an Indiana native like me who made the jump to LA several years ago. We discussed his experience working and making films in both Los Angeles and Indiana, how to get a job in Hollywood, as well as how to stand out in a saturated market. Let's get into it. Radomir, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the time to talk with you. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? What do you do?
Great to be here. I'm glad we're finally chatting. What I do is camera department in various places like LA. In my own time, I shoot random funny short movies that are on my YouTube channel. You've seen some, but why not all? You could see all of them.
I've seen quite a few of them. I'll have to definitely check out more of them. Walk me through a little bit, like what exactly do you do in the camera department?
That's anything from just assembling cameras and helping out camera operators to being a camera operator and all the way up to being a director of photography. Putting cameras together, maintaining them, charging batteries, to swapping out cars and such. And if I'm director of photography, then I just make the lighting choices and put the camera as needed. That is what I do, just touching cameras, making them do stuff.
We're both from Indiana. I wanted to ask you about your time working on movies in Indiana. Like, was it mostly personal projects for you, or did you work anything, I don't want to call your work not professional, but you mean outside of your own personal projects?
I pulled focus on No Place. That was a feature that I worked on that was after a few other movies where I could kind of get more comfortable and just say to people, yeah, I can go ahead and work on this. And also in Indiana, what happened is I found a studio where a guy just had some space and he said, if you want to shoot here and just build up some work, that's cool. Just let me know when, and if I have free time, you just walk in. And he also had cameras, and he said, just borrow these cameras so you can look like you've got big cameras. I liked that I could, in Indiana, work on both professional and personal productions with kind of a mix of experiences where I could make them look more professional by just having access to materials, and also I could get into professional productions with now the comfort of having worked with the larger cameras and bigger lights and such. When I was in Indiana, what would happen is people would want to be in movies, but they hadn't really acted before, and that's fine, but it wasn't their career. And so there were things that would happen, like they might show up late or have to leave early or not show up, just because of life, and there's nothing that you can't blame them, because that's just stuff happens and comes up. Whereas in LA, people who are actors absolutely have to show up. This is their life. It's easier to work out here, I think. And if you're in Indiana, it is a little tougher to get started and to keep going.
Say you wanted to make a short film, like you have like a dream short film project that you want to make right now. Do you think you would have an easier time doing it in a place like Indiana or Los Angeles?
With experience, you could shoot anything anywhere. It's just you need to have the right experience to figure that out. With what I was shooting short films and they were kind of looking a little rough, and that was because I didn't have the time and the resources to get everybody there to figure out lighting and whatnot. It's also about scheduling. Like, you can't always be the one in Indiana writing scripts and directing them and even operating the camera and changing lights, and then also scheduling. But here, people actually specialize in scheduling, so you can just get somebody to figure out your schedule, and then you can go ahead and do 2 or 3 hour setups, and you'll still make all your days because everything's just kind of laid out.
Say like I wanted to make a short film in Los Angeles right now. What would be your best advice as far as getting something like that going?
Just shoot it. If you want more resources, though, it does simply take time. So what you do is you do just shoot a movie, and then it'll be chaotic, and you maybe do a few more of those. And over time, you'll meet some people on your sets. Like this person knows another person, and that other person comes to your set to help out. But that particular individual actually wants to get into this scheduling stuff. So you just hire that person for your next thing because you've by that time made money, and then you do your scheduling. So you do start off just shooting it. And then over time, as you build relationships with people, then you've got those people that come up, and help you out. And it does weirdly work out like that.
So the part that I'm most interested in about your story is definitely the move from Indiana to Los Angeles. Let's just say, there's 1 out of 100 people like me and you out here in Indiana making films and video projects and such, but you go out to Los Angeles and there's probably 90 or so people out of 100 that are doing the same thing like me or you. What are your thoughts on just trying to stand out amongst the crowd, essentially, in a place like Los Angeles?
It's that you have to be ready in every way, because every person you meet needs some other thing that is expected of you by that completely unique individual you just met. So you need to have a website and a reel and business cards and people you've worked with before and IMDb and just everything just prepared. So when you go to meet somebody, you just say like, here's this thing, I have this idea. And then they say, all right, that's a cool idea. I like that this kind of idea is something you'd have. I don't want to do that though. What else do you have? And you should have like 7 more ideas ready to go. So written out features, written out whatever. So it's a lot of work that you have to do to put into becoming just a ready person to go out and start. My trick was having this YouTube channel where I had footage and I just picked out the pieces that looked really nice and built a reel, and then I know how to make websites, so I didn't have to put any effort into it. If you're gonna move out here or to any sort of filmmaking place and you want to be as ready, you don't need to be this ready. It's just helpful to be super ready all the time, but you should at least do a few things here and there to get in the swing of it.
What would you say is like good advice as far as like working your way up if you want to, say, become a director of photography professionally, or even just, you know, even the lower levels like the assistant cameras or anything like that?
So it really is just getting to know people. So what you do is have stuff in the field that you've done. So like, let's say that you have a bunch of samples of lighting if you want to do gaffing, or you have a sound reel if you want to mix audio, and then you just keep showing this to people and maybe do a couple things with some film students here and there. And it's just kind of a waiting game, because then people you've worked with remember you and get you back in. You just have to have, not wherewithal, but maybe wherewithal, not to accept free work, because then people aren't in control of this. They don't know, you know, you just work for free for somebody and that person says to the next person, I know this guy, he worked for free for me. And then suddenly you're not in a position to have to charge a lot of, you know, money closer to what you'd expect your day rate to be. The best thing to do is just to accept only paid work and be already in what you're doing by maybe a couple times working with some friends or have already done some stuff, which is why you even want to get into this department. You just have to create a situation where you have the resources.
How did you go about like setting a price as far as what you charge for your work? Because you're doing all freelance work, correct?
Yeah, I just asked other people. One time I charged what I thought was awesome, and then I told somebody and he said, that's way too little. And so suddenly I just had to change my thinking into charging more. And I get it, because you're only going to do camera stuff a few times a month. Do you want to cover LA rent and food and gas and all that stuff just barely, or do you want something to just put away some money for retirement and like live reasonably, have money for emergencies? I like the latter. It takes time, but if you put the time into it, then it'll pay off. So just ask people, research, see online what's going on, and then you'll know how much to charge.
I definitely have my pitch when I'm pitching to clients. So how do you do your pitch generally to justify the cost of what you charge?
That's a great question, because my answer is you don't have to justify. Your cost is correct because it's the industry standard. You'd have to justify if you were charging an insane amount of money. What you've asked actually highlights for me something I should have brought up earlier, that it is a mindset change, that you have to believe in yourself actually being worth this much, because when you're shooting stuff, you know, you realize other people actually could be doing it worse. There's much more money out there than you will ever get, and people have it. And when you charge a day rate that you feel is high because you're thinking with your wallet, the client usually is saying, oh, okay, good. That's not a lot then. It's just a game you play with yourself to figure out how to charge what you're actually worth.
I really want to thank Radomir again for talking with me, but that's only a tiny fraction of everything we talked about in this interview. You can see that full video right here.